The stars had always seemed peaceful to humanity. For 100 years, they had traveled among them, building colonies in distant moons and trading with the few alien species they encountered. They thought the universe was a quiet place, full of wonder and opportunity. They were wrong. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in Geneva. Director Sarah Etchen was drinking her coffee when every screen in the United Earth Command building turned red. The alarm started screaming. Officers ran through the hallways shouting orders that nobody could hear over the noise. "What is happening?" Sarah demanded, grabbing a young lieutenant by the arm. "Ships, ma'am. Thousands of them. They just appeared near Jupiter." Sarah felt her blood turned cold. Humanity had met other species before. The Morvani were peaceful traders. The CRE kept to themselves, but everyone in the galaxy whispered about one empire that ruled with an iron fist. The Valari Dominion. Within an hour, the number of ships grew from thousands to millions. They spread across the solar system like a dark cloud, blocking out the light from distant stars. Each vessel was massive, covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. The smallest of them was bigger than any human battleship. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the carrier Resilience and watched her tactical display with growing horror. The numbers kept climbing. 1 million ships, 2 million, 5 million. By the time they stopped arriving, there were 9 million Bel-3 vessels surrounding Earth's solar system. "This is not an invasion force," she said quietly to her first officer. "This is an extermination fleet." The message came 3 hours later. Every radio, every television, every computer screen on Earth showed the same image. A tall, thin creature with gray skin and 4 eyes stared at humanity. It wore robes of deep purple and golden chains hung from its neck. When it spoke, its voice was cold and empty of any emotion. "Primitive species of the third planet," said I am High Speaker, Voreth of the Valari Dominion. "For 12,000 years we have ruled this galaxy. Every species bows before us or is destroyed. There is no third option." Creature paused, letting its words sink in. "You have built toys that you call starships. You have spread to a few nearby rocks that you call colonies. You believe you are important. You are not. You are insects crawling in the dirt, dreaming that you are eagles." Voreth leaned closer to Thecamera. "The Dominion offers you a choice. Surrender completely and without conditions. Allow us to catalog your genetics. Accept your place as a Servanto race. Your people will live, though not as you live now. You will serve. You will obey. You will worship the Dominion as your masters." The aliens for eyes narrowed, or refuse, and watch your world burn. Watch your colonies turn to ash. Watch every human being die screaming, "We have destroyed 1,000 species before you." You will not be remembered. You will simply cease to exist. The screen went dark in Geneva. The leaders of Earth gathered in the Great Council Chamber. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and admirals, scientists and diplomats. They argued for hours. Some wanted to surrender immediately. What choice did they have? 9 million ships against humanity's fleet of a few hundred vessels. It was not a war they could win. "We cannot fight them," said President Morrison of the North American Union. "The math does not work. We surrender, or we die." "And if we surrender?" asked General Marcus Cole, a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. "They said we would be servitors, slaves." "Is that truly better than death?" "At least we would be alive," Morrison replied. "Would we?" "I have read their reports from the Morvani traders. The Valari do not treat their servitor rays kindly. They work them to death in mines. They use them for experiments. Some species have been modified so much that they cannot even think for themselves anymore. That is not life. That is something worse than death." The argument continued through the night. Admiral Tanaka stood by the window looking up at the sky. Somewhere beyond the clouds, 9 million enemy ships waited. She thought about her daughter, Yuki Jr., who served as a lieutenant on the destroyer Swift. She thought of other grandchildren who lived in the Tokyo arcology. What kind of future would they have under Valari rule? The door-tooth chamber opened and a woman walked in. She was small and thin, with messy gray hair and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked like she had not slept in days. "I need to speak to the council," she said. "Ihei found something." The arguing stopped. Everyone turned to look at the old scientists. "Dr. Vasquez," said Decancil chairman, "this is not the time. We are discussing the survival of our species. That is exactly why I am here." Elena walked to the center of the room and placed a data pad on the table. "I have spent 30 years digging in the Martian caves. 30 years studying the artifacts we found there. Everyone thought they were left by some ancient alien species that visited our system long ago. I believe that too. I was wrong." She pressed a button on the data pad, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed a DNA strand glowing blue against the darkness. "This is human DNA. Normal human DNA. That you would find in any person on Earth." She pressed another button, and parts of the strand turned adrad. "These sections have always confused geneticists. We call it junk DNA because Wu did not know what it did. It seemed useless, like leftover code from evolution." Elena looked around the room, making sure everyone was paying attention. "It is not junk. It is a message. A very, very old message." She pressed another button, and the hologram changed to show ancient symbols carved in stone. "These are the artifacts from Mars. For 30 years I could not read them. No human could. But last night something changed. I looked at them. Andy could read them like I had always known how, but had forgotten." The room was completely silent now. The symbols tell a story. Long ago, before the Velari Dominion existed, another species ruled this galaxy. They were called the Architects. They built wonders that we cannot imagine. They created technologies that still power the Velari Empire today. They were gods among Thesters. Elena's voice grew quiet. And then something happened to them, something terrible. They fought a war not against another species, but against themselves. They had a power inside them, something that made them perfect warriors, but also made them lose themselves. They called it the Black Rising. When it took hold, they became one stipple in battle. But they also became something less than what they were, something darker. She turned off the hologram and looked at the council. The Architects did not want to become monsters. So, they did something incredible. They split themselves apart. They removed the dangerous parts of their nature, sealed them away in their own genes, and scattered themselves across the galaxy. They made themselves forget. They became primitive species, starting over on countless worlds, hoping that one day they would evolve into something better. President Morrison shook his head. "What does this have to do with us?" Elena smiled sadly. "We are them, humanity. We're the children of the Architects. The junk DNA in our bodies is not junk at all. It is the sealed power of an ancient species, the power that the Architects locked away, the power that the Velarids still fear even after 12,000 years. General Cole leaned forward. "You are saying we have some kind of weapon inside us? I am saying we have something inside us that the Velari conquered the galaxy to make sure never woke up again. Why do you think they want to catalog our genetics? They are not looking to use us as workers. They are looking to see if the Architect genes are still there. And if they are, they will destroy us immediately. Surrender or not." The room erupted in chaos. People shouted questions and arguments. Some called Elena crazy, others demanded more proof. Admiral Tanaka remained silent, thinking. Finally, she spoke, and her voice cut through the noise. "Can we wake it up? This power you speak of?" Elena nodded slowly. "I believe so. I am already starting to feel it myself. The ability to read the Martian symbols came from somewhere. Others have reported similar experiences. Scientists sadly understanding technologies they could not before. Soldiers feeling stronger and faster than they should. Something is awakening in humanity." "Then we have a choice to make," said General Cole. "Surrender and hope the Velari do. Not kill us anyway, or fight back with a power we do not understand, in Contro." The council debated through the night and into the next day. Finally, as Thiessen rose over Geneva, they reached a decision. It was not unanimous. It wasn't even close to unanimous, but it was a decision. Admiral Tanaka turned to her ship and prepared to send humanity's response to the Valari fleet. Her hands were steady as she pressed the transmit button, but her heart was racing. This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the Terran Compact speaking for all of humanity. We have received your demands. We have considered them carefully. She paused, looking out at the stars. Ukul us insects. You call us primitive. You believe you know what we are. You are wrong. On the bridge of his flagship, High Speaker Vareth watched with growing irritation. For 12,000 years you have ruled this galaxy through fear. You have crushed every species that stood against you. You have made slaves of billions. You believe that you are the masters of all creation. Admiral Tanaka's eyes wear hard. But you are afraid. You have always been afraid. You built your empire on the ruins of the architects, and you have spent 12,000 years. The king, sir, they never return. You destroyed anyone who carried their genes. You erased their history. You made the galaxy forget them. She leaned forward. We remember we are their children. We carry their blood in our veins and their power in our souls. You came here to exterminate us because you were afraid of what we might become. On the Veli flagship, High Speaker Voreth felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. Earth does not surrender, Admiral. Tanaka declared. Earth does not bow. Earth does not serve. She stood tall, and somewhere deep inside her something ancient and powerful began to stir. Earth remembers, and Earth will show you why the architects were feared across the stars. The transmission ended. For a long moment, there was silence in the Valari fleet. Then High Speaker Varath began Tola. It was a cold, empty sound. They choose extinction, he said. So be it. All vessels, prepare for planetary bombardment. We will burn that rock Toshes and scatter those ashes across the void. The architect bloodline ends today. But even as he gave the order, Vor felt a chill run down his spine. The humans had looked at 9 million warships and chosen to fight anyway. Either they were completely insane, or they knew something he did not. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in her laboratory surrounded by ancient Martian artifacts. The symbols on them were glowing now, responding to her presence. She could feel the power inside her, waiting to be released. All around the world, other humans were feeling the same thing. General Cole was organizing the defense of Earth. It was a hopeless task with their current weapons. But he did not plan to use their current weapons. Human scientists were already working on the first architective technologies. Weapons that could punch through Veltari shields. Engines that could outrun their fastest ships. Armor that could shrug off their heaviest weapons. Admiral Tanaka gathered her fleet. A few hundred ships against 9 million. The odds were impossible. But humanity had faced impossible odds before. They had survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. They had always found a way. And now they were about to remember why the galaxy had once trembled at the name of Thurchitex. The war for Earth was about to begin. It would not be the war Thavalar expected. It would not be a quick extermination of a primitive species. It would be the awakening of something ancient and terrible. The Black Rising was coming, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. High Speaker Voreth sat on his throne aboard flagship Divine Judgment and watched the transmission from Earth again. The human admiral had looked into his eyes and told him that Earth would not surrender. She had spoken of Thurchitex like they were something to be proud of instead of ashamed of. Foolish creatures, he muttered. They do not know what they are playing with. His second in command, Fleet Master Korith, stood nearby with his head bowed in respect. Should we begin the bombardment, High Speaker? Not yet. Vorath stroked the golden chains around his neck, thinking, send a message to the theocrat. Tell him what these human shave claimed. Tell him that the architect bloodline may not be as dead as we believed. The holy theocrat will not be pleased. No, he will not. But he needs to know if these humans truly carry the old blood. We must be careful. The architects were not destroyed by ordinary weapons. On Earth, something extrendi was happening. Dr. Alina Basquez woke up that morning and found that she could see differently. The world around her seemed sharper, clearer. Colors were brighter. Sounds were crisper. When she looked at her laboratory equipment, she could see how it worked down to the smallest molecule. "This is impossible," she whispered to herself. But even as she said it, she knew it was not impossible. It was the awakening. She was not the only one. Across the planet, humans were experiencing strange changes. A factory worker in Shanghai suddenly understood quantum physics without ever studying it. A fisherman in Norway could sense the movements of fish miles away. Occult in Brazil woke up speaking a language that had not been heard for 1,000,000 years. General Marcus Caloria reports of these incidents by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Then by the tens of thousands, something was spreading through humanity like a wave. And it was only getting stronger. "What is happening to us?" he asked Alina when she arrived at command headquarters. "We are remembering," she said simply. "The knowledge of the architects is locked in our genes. It is waking up. Every human being carries it, but it activates differently in each person. Some will gain knowledge. Some will gain physical abilities. Some will gain something else entirely. Something else." Alina hesitated. The architects were not just scientists and builders. They were also warriors. The greatest warriors the galaxy has ever known. That part of them is waking up too. I have felt it myself. A coldness in my chest. A desire to fight that I have never felt before. They called it the Black Rising. Cole frowned. "Is it dangerous?" "Everything powerful is dangerous. But we do not have a choice. The Valari will attack soon, and without the awakening, we cannot hope to survive." In the orbital shopyards above Earth, Chief Engineer David Park was having a very strange day. He had woken up knowing things, not just facts, but deep understanding. He looked at the blueprints for humanity's most advanced warship and saw them for what they truly were. Primitive, clumsy, wrong. "This is all wrong," he said to his team. "The power systems are inefficient. The weapons are weak. The shields will fail against Valari technology." His assistant looked at him with concern. "Chief, you designed Thou systems yourself. You said they were the best we could build." "They were yesterday. Today I know better." David grabbed a stylus and began drawing. Hishan moved on its own, guided by knowledge that flowed from somewhere deep inside him. "We need to rebuild everything. Tear out the main reactor. Replace it with this." He showed them the design. It was nothing like any human technology. It used principles that should have been impossible, but David knew it would work. He knew it as surely as he knew his own name. "This will increase oral power output by 3,000%. In this, he drew another design. "Will give us weapons that can cut through Valari's shields like they are not even there." His team stared at the designs in amazement. "How do you know this?" his assistant asked. David smiled grimly. He remembered. Within days. The first modified ship was ready for testing. They called it the Prometheus, converted cargo hauler that David and his team had rebuilt from the inside out. It was ugly, covered in patches and welded on components. But inside, it carried the first architect-derived weapons humanity had built in 1,000,000 years. Admiral Tanaka watched the test from the bridge of the Resilience. A Valari scout ship had been captured and towed to a safe distance for target practice. "Fire when ready," she ordered. The Prometheus was small, barely a fraction of the size of the Valari scout. Its single weapon charged with a sound like thunder. A beam of pure white light shot across space and struck the enemy vessel. The Valari ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, broken down into atoms and scattered across the void. There wasslants on the bridge of the Resilience. Then someone began to cheer. The cheering spread until the entire ship was celebrating. Admiral Tanaka did not celebrate. She stared at the empty space where the enemy ship had been and felt a cold knot in her stomach. She had just seen what humanity was becoming. It was wonderful and terrible at the same time. "Begin full production," she ordered quietly. "Every ship in the fleet gets abraded. Every weapon gets replaced. We have days at most before the Valari attack. Across the solar system, humanity worked with desperate speed. Factories ran day and night, producing new weapons and components. Engineers who had never understood advanced physics suddenly found themselves building devices that bent the laws of nature. Soldiers trained with abilities they had not possessed a week earlier. But humanity was not the only one watching. On a distant world called Krees, the insect-like Kree huddled in their underground tunnels and watched the transmissions from Sol System. For 3,000 years, they had been slaves of the Valari Dominion. They had lost their freedom, their culture, and their hope. Generation after generation had been born into chains. Now they watched a small species called humans tell the Valari to go away. They watched humans claim to be the children of the architects. They watched humans refuse to kneel. Is it true? Asked a young Kreth named Sheetik. Are they really the descendants of the old ones? The elder beside him, Krevik, did not answer immediately. Huaz watching the human admiral speak. She was so small, so fragile looking compared to the mighty Belthry. But there was something in her eyes. A fire that Krovik had not seen in any species for a very long time. I do not know if it is true, Krovik finally said, but I know that these humans believe it is true. They are willing to die for that belief. That is more than any other species has done since the Dominion rose to power. What will happen to them? The Valari will try to destroy them. They have 9 million ships. The humans have a few hundred. The numbers say the humans should lose. Then why do you sound hopeful? Krevik made the clicking sound. That was the CRE equivalent of a smile. Because Thurchitex never cared much about numbers. If these humans truly carry the old blood, the Valari may have made the worst mistake in their history. Similar conversations were happening on World Sacros, the galaxy. The Morvani traders whispered in their market halls. The gray-skinned Hollow spoke quietly in their mountain caves. The crystalline Char hummed with frequencies of hope they had not used in millennia. The Valari had ruled through fear for 12,000 years. They had taught every species that resistance was futile, that bowing was the only way to survive. But now a small species from a new important star system was standing up and saying no, and the galaxy was watching. On Earth, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. stood on the bridge of her destroyer, the swift and felt that change flowing through her body. She had always been a good officer, smart and capable, but now she was becoming something more. Her reflexes were faster. Her thoughts were clearer. She could look at a tactical display and see patterns that would have been invisible to her a week ago, the lieutenant said, her weapons officer. When he finished installing the new systems, ready for testing? Good. Let us see what we can do. This Swift had been transformed. New weapons bristled from its hull. New, ingeniumed with power. New shields wrapped around it like a second skin. It was still the same ship, but it had become something far more dangerous. Yuki ran her fingers over the controls and felt the ship respond to her touch. Not just mechanically, but almost alive. The architect technology seemed to recognize her, seemed to welcome her. This is what we were meant to be, she whispered to herself. This is what we forgot. She thought about her mother commanding theftily from the Resilience. She thought about her father who had died when she was young. A civilian killed in an accident on Mars. She thought about all the humans who had lived and died over the centuries, never knowing what they truly were. They had been sleeping, all of them, an entire species dreaming that they were ordinary, that they were weak, that they were alone in a hostile universe. Now they were waking up and the dream was ending. High Speaker Voreth received the message from the Holy Theocrat on the 3rd day. It came through the most secure channel that Dominion possessed, encrypted with codes that even Voreth had never seen before. You will not bombard Earth, the message said. You will not destroy the humans from space. They must be killed on the ground, face to face with witnesses. The galaxy must see them die. The galaxy must see that the architect bloodline brings only death. Voreth read the message 3 times. He did not like it. A ground invasion would be costly. The Dominion would lose soldiers, perhaps Mani soldiers. But the Theocrat's word was law. Prepare the landing forces, he ordered Fleet Master Corps. We will take Earth the old way. We will hunt these humans through their cities and their forests. We will make them beg for the death they refuse. And if they truly have architect powers, then we will learn what those powers are, and we will find ways to destroy them. The architects were not gods. They could be killed. Their children can be killed too. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before the United Earth Council and delivered her final report. The awakening is spreading faster than he predicted. Within a week, every human being on Earth will begin to feel its effects. Some will change more than others. Some will gain abilities that I cannot even describe. But everyone will be different. Different how? Asked President Morrison. Stronger, faster, smarter, more connected to each other. Elena paused, but there is a risk. The architects sealed away the Black Rising for a reason. It gave them incredible power in battle, but it also consummated them. They lost themselves to it. They became something other than what they had been. What do you mean they lost themselves? The Black Rising is not just a power. It is almost like a living thing. When it takes hold, it drives out everything else. Fear, doubt, mercy, compassion, all of it disappears. Only the will to fight remains. The architects became perfect warriors, but they stopped being people. General Cole spoke up. You are saying that if we use this power, we might win the war, but lose our humanity. I am saying it is a risk. The architects cannot not control the Black Rising. Perhaps we cannot either, but without it, we will certainly be destroyed. The Valari have 9 million ships. Even with our new weapons, we cannot fight them all. The council was silent for a long moment. Then we have no choice, Admiral Tanaka said finally. We must take the risk. We must awaken everything we have and hope that we are strong enough to control it. And if we are not, Morisonosked, Tanaka's eyes were hard, then the galaxy will have something far worse than the Valari to worry about. That night, the Valari fleet began its advance toward Earth. 9 million ships moving as one. A tide of destruction that had crushed 1,000 species before. At their front came the landing craft carrying millions of Valari soldiers, armed with the most advanced weapons the Dominion possessed. They expected to find a primitive species cowering in fear. They expected to find a sea prey. They found something very different. As the first Valari ships entered weapons range, the human fleet moved to meet them. It was a small force. Barely 500 vessels against 9 million. The Valari commanders laughed at the sight. Then the human ships opened fire. Beams of white light cut through space. Valari vessels exploded by the hundreds. Shields that had never failed Bear collapsed in seconds. Ships that had conquered worlds were torn apart like paper. On the bridge of the Divine Judgment, High Speaker Vareth stared at his tactical display in disbelief. What is happening? He demanded. Their weapons? Fleetmaster Koros said, his voice shaking. They are not like any weapons we have seen. They are cutting through our shields like they do not exist. That is impossible. Our shields, sir, based on architect technology. Nothing can penetrate them. Apparently, something can. Vorith watched as his forward fleet died. 1,000 ships gone in the first minute. 10,000 ships gone in the first 5 minutes. The humans were not just fighting back. They were winning. All ships, return fire, he ordered. Concentrate everything on the human vessels. The Valari fleet unleashed its fury. Millions of weapons fired at once. A storm of destruction that should have vaporized the human ships instantly. But the human ships were no longer where they had been. They moved with impossible speed, dodging and weaving through the fire, striking back with deadly precision. On the bridge of these whiffed, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka felt the Black Rising take hold. Her vision sharpened, her thoughts accelerated. She could see every enemy ship, every weapon, every trajectory. She moved her hands across the controls and the swift danced through space, like a living thing. Target locked, she said calmly. Firing. Another Valari ship died. Target locked. Firing another. Target locked, firing another. Across the human fleet. The same transformation was happening. Officers and crew members alike were falling into the grip of the Black Rising. Their eyes turned dark. Their movements became precise and coordinated. They fought not as individuals, but as one organism, each ship anticipating what the others would do. The Viteri had never faced anything like it. Their advantage in numbers meant nothing when their ships died faster than they could bring them to beer. Their experience meant nothing when their enemies seemed to know their tactics before they executed them. First time in 12,000 years, the Velari Dominion began to lose. High Speaker Varith watched his fleet being destroyed and felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt fear. And deep in the black of space, something ancient was waking up. Something that had slept for 1,000,000 years. Something that the galaxy had almost forgotten. The architects were returning, and they were very, very angry. The battle for Sol System had begun, and the galaxy held its breath. On every world under Velari rule, screens showed the Sami-Mages. Human ships cutting through the mighty Dominion fleet. Velari. Vessels exploding by the hundreds. The most powerful military force in the galaxy, falling back before a species that had been dismissed as primitive insects. But the Velari had not conquered 1,000 species by giving up easily. High Speaker Voroth watched his forward fleet die and made a cold decision. Send in the reserve, he ordered all of it. Every ship we have overwhelmed them with numbers. Fleetmaster Kor hesitated. High Speaker, that will leave us with no fallback position. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. They have 500 ships. We have 9 million. Even if they destroy 100 of our vessels for every one we destroy of theirs, we will still win. This is simplematics. The reserve fleet moved forward. 5 million ships that have been waiting bend, the main force now joined the battle. The space around Earth filled with Velari vessels until there was no room to maneuver. No space to hide. The human fleet was surrounded on all sides. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Resilience and watched the enemy close in. Her tactical display was a CAF red dots, so many that the computer could barely keep track of them all. All ships tight in formation, she ordered. Protect each other. Make them pay for every inch. The battle became a nightmare. Human ships fought with desperate courage. Their architect-derived weapons carving paths of destruction through the enemy fleet. But there were simply too many. For every ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The destroyer Swift took a direct hit to its engine section. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka felt her ship shudder and saw Thi damage reports flood across her screen. Engine 2 is gone, her chief engineer shouted. We are losing power. Reroute everything to weapons and shields, Yuki commented. If we cannot run, we will stand and fight. Around her, the crew moved with impossible precision. The Black Rising had taken hold of all of them now. Their eyes were dark, their movements coordinated. They felt no fear, no doubt, only the cold certitude they would fight until they could fight no more. The Swift's weapons fired again and again. Velari ships died, but more kept coming across the system. The human defense was beginning to crack. Mars fell first. The colonies there fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Velari landing craft touched down on the red soil, and millions of Dominion soldiers poured out to hunt the colonists. The transmissions from Mars were horrible. Humans fighting with whatever weapons they could find. Families hiding in underground tunnels. Children crying as their parents treed to shield them from the invaders. General Cole watched the reports from Earth and felt something break inside Ahim. We are losing, he said quietly. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the screens. Not yet. The awakening is not complete. When it finishes, we may already be dead. On the Resilience, Admiral Tanaka received the reports from Mars, her home. Her family's home for 3 generations, now burning under Velari boots. Admiral, her communications officer, said Luna Base is under attack. They are requesting reinforcements. Luna, Earth's moon, the last line of defense before the homeworld itself. We have no reinforcements to send, Tanaka said. Her voice was flat, empty. The Black Rising was growing stronger inside her, but so far she had kept it under control. Tell them to hold as long as they can. Luna fell 3 hours later. The defenders fought to the last person. But there were simply too many enemies. Valari forces landed on the lunar surface and began setting up bombardmental forms aimed at Earth. They are preparing for planetary assault. Fleetmaster Kor reported to High Speaker Vorath. Our ground forces are ready. Should I give the order? Vorath smiled coldly. Not yet. Let them watch Lenaborn first. Let them understand what is coming. Fear is a weapon too. On Earth, billions of people watched the sky and waited for death. The Valari ships were invisible now. Dark shapes blocking out the stars. The bombardment platforms on Luna began firing, their beams targeting military installations and population centers alike. Tokyo burned, London burned, New York burned. Billions screamed and ran and died as the Veltari showed humanity exactly what happened to species that defied them. And then something changed. It started with one person, a factory worker in Shanghai named Li Wei. He had been working in a shelter trying to help wounded survivors when a Valari orbital strike hit nearby. The explosion threw him across the room, and for a moment he lay on the ground bleeding and broken. Then the Black Rising took him completely. Li Wei stood up, his wounds closed. His eyes turned pure, black without white or pupil. When he spoke, his voice was not his own. Enough. The word echoed through the shelter. Everyone turned to look at him. He walked outside into the burning street and raised his hands toward the sky. Something came out of him, a wave of darkness that shot upward like a beam of black light. It struck the Valera bombardment platform above Shanghai and passed through its shields like they were not there. The platform exploded. Li Wei collapsed, unconscious, but alive. But the thing that had passed through him did not stop. It spread outward, touching other humans, awakening them. In Geneva, General Cole felt it hit him like a physical blow. His vision went dark, then came back clearer than ever before. He could see Valari ships in orbit. He could feel every human being on Earth connected to him through bonds of shared blood and ancient memory. The awakening is complete, Dr. Elena Vasquez whispered beside him. Her eyes were black, too. We remember now. We remember everything. Across the planet, billions of humans transformed. Not all of them became warriors. Some gained the power to heal. Some gained the power to build. Some simply understood finally what they truly were. But many of them did become warriors. And for those who did, the Black Rising opened fully. On their resilience, Admiral Tanaka felt the change sweep through her crew. Felt it sweep through herself. The last barriers inside her mind fell away, and ancient memories flooded in. Memories of battles fought among the stars. Memories of enemies destroyed and worlds conquered. Memories of power beyond anything the Valari could imagine. Her eyes turned black. All ships, she said, and her voice carried across the fleet through channels that had nothing to do with radio. It is Stum. Show them what we are. The human fleet transformed. Ships that had been fighting defensively suddenly surged forward. Their weapons fired with new precision, new power. Crews that had been struggling to survive now moved as one organism. Perfectly coordinated, perfectly deadly. Valari ships began to die. Not by the hundreds now, but by the thousands. By the tens of thousands. The human fleet carved through the Enema formation like a knife through paper. On the Divine Judgment, High Speaker Vorth watched his tactical display and felt his world crumbling. What is happening? He demanded. Their ship shape not changed. They have the same weapons, the same defenses. How are they suddenly so much more effective? I do not know, High Speaker, Kor said. His voice was shaking. But we have lost 200,000 ships in the last hour. At this rate, nothing. We still outnumber them. Press the attack. But pressing the attack was no longer possible. The human fleet was everywhere at once, striking weak points, avoiding strong ones, moving with coordination that no normal military force could match. It was like fighting a single organism with 500 bodies. Captain James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance and felt the Black Rising singing in his blood. He could sense every ship in the human fleet. He could feel their crews, their weapons, their hearts beating in sync with his own. "Target their command ships," he ordered. "Cut off the head and the body will die." The Defiance led a strike force toward the center of the Valera formation. They moved through a storm of enemy fire, their shields absorbing wet they could not dodge, their weapons clearing a path. High Speaker Vareth saw them coming. For the first time in his long life, he felt real fear. "Protect the flagship," he screamed. "All ships, protect the divine judgment." But there were not enough ships. The human strike force punched through the defensive screen and engaged the flagship directly. The divine judgment was massive, bristling with weapons, protected by shields that had never failed. The shields failed now. Captain Okonkwo's weapons cut through them in seconds. The Defiance's main gun fired once, twice, 3 times. Each shot tore through the divine judgment shield like it was made of paper. High Speaker Vareth felt his ship dying around him. Fire erupted on the bridge. Officers screamed as consoles exploded. The deck tilted as artificial gravity failed. "Abandoned ship." Fleet Master Korath shouted. "No," Voreth said. He stood among the chaos, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display. "I will not run from animals. I will not." The final shot struck the Divine Judgment's power cores. The flagship of the Valerian invasion fleet vanished in a bowl of white fire. The Valari fleet reeled. Their High Speaker was dead. Their command structure was shattered. Ships begun to pull back, uncertain, afraid. Admiral Tanaka's voice echoed across the void. "They are running. Do not let them escape." The human fleet pursued. What had been a desperate defense became a relentless hunt. Valari ships tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The humans were everywhere, their weapons finding every target. Their ships moving faster than should have been possible. In 6 hours, the Beltari lost 1 million ships. The survivors finally broke and ran, jumping to faster than light speeds and fleeing the Sol system in complete disorder. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Valari Dominion had been defeated in battle. On Earth, the survivors emerged from shelters and looked up at the sky. The Valari ships were gone. The bombardment had stopped. Against all odds, against all reason, humanity had won. But the cost had been terrible. Billions were dead. Cities were ruins. Mars and Luna were conquered territory, their surviving populations sense-laved. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of their resilience and felt Theblack, rising slowly fade. Her eyes returned to normal around her crew members, were collapsing at their stations. Exhausted, transformed, struggling to understand what they had become. She opened a channel to the fleet. "We have won this battle," she said. "But the war is not over. The Vitari will return with more ships. They will try again to destroy us. We cannot allow that." On the Defiance, Captain Okonkwo listened. He could feel the black rising, still lurking inside him, waiting to be called again. "What do Wado?" someone asked. Tanaka's voice was cold. "We take the fight to them. We'll pursue them. We free the species they have enslaved. We burn their empire to the ground. And then we make sure that no one ever threatens Earth again." On the flagship of the fleeing Valari fleet, the new commander Fleet Master Korath sent a desperate message to the Holy Theocrat. "The humans have awakened. They carry the full power of the Architect bloodline. They destroyed Dagishper Voreth and 1 million of our ships. They are pursuing us as I speak. The Dominion is in danger." The Holy Theocrat received the message in his throne room on Valeris Prime. He was sentient. Far older than any other Valeri, kept alive by technology stolen from the architects themselves. He had ruled the Dominion for 10,000 years. He had seen species rise and fall. He had crushed rebellions and conquered empires. Now he felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. The architects were returning. The species that his ancestors had betrayed and destroyed were coming back from the dead. And this time, they would not be stopped easily. The Holy Theocrat issued new orders. Every ship in the Dominion was to mobilize. Every soldier was to arm themselves. Every resource was to be dedicated to one goal, the complete and utter destruction of humanity. But even as he gave the orders, he knew the truth. The Valari had spent 12,000 years making sure the architects never returned. They had failed. And now they would pay the price. The Black Rising had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since it battled the soul. 3 months since humanity had discovered what they truly were. 3 months since the Black Rising had awakened in the blood of every human being. Now, the galaxy was on fire. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Resilience and watched as another Valari fortress world surrendered. The planetary defense grid had lasted 17 minutes against the human fleet. The orbital stations had fallen in the first wave. The ground forces had thrown down their weapons when they saw what was coming for them. Occupation Forces Erlanding now. Her aide reported the Hollow population is requesting to meet with our commanders. The Hollow, a species of gray-skinned humanoids who had been enslaved by the Valari for 8,000 years. They had mined radioactive materials in conditions that killed most of them before they reached adulthood. They had watched their children taken away to Zerv and Veltari households. They had forgotten what freedom meant. Now they were free. Admiral Tanaka should have felt proud. Should have felt satisfied. Instead, she felt nothing. The Black Rising had grown stronger with each battle, and each time it awakened, it became harder to return to normal. The cold, efficient part of her mind kept growing. The warm, human part kept shrinking. "Tell the Hollow that we welcome them to the Alliance," she said. "Give them whatever they need. We move on to the next system in 6 hours." Harad hesitated. "ADM, the fleet has been fighting continuously for 3 months. The crews are exhausted. Perhaps we could take a few days to 6 hours. The Velarari regrouping. We cannot give them time to organize their defenses." The aide nodded and left. Tanaka turned back to the tactical display and began planning the next assault. She had not slept in 4 days. She did not need to. The Black Rising sustained her, kept her body running long past its normal limits. But it demanded something in return. It demanded that she keep fighting, keep killing, keep conquering, sometimes in quiet moments. She wondered if she was still herself, if Yuki Tanaka still existed, or if Shay had been replaced by something wearing her face. She did not wonder for long. There was always another battle to plan. On the carrier Defiance, Captain James Sokonkwo was having similar thoughts. He sat alone in his quarters, staring at these hands. Those hands had killed more people in the last 3 months than he could count. Valari soldiers and crew members, tens of thousands of them, maybe hundreds of thousands. He had not felt anything when he killed them. The Black Rising had wrapped around his mind like a blanket, smothering all doubt and hesitation. He had been a weapon, nothing more, a tool of destruction pointed at the enemies of humanity. Now in the darkness of his quarters, he tried to remember what Afad felt like to be just a man, to have normal emotions, to care about the Livish Took. He could not remember. His door chimed. "Come in," he said. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park entered. She was young, barely 30, but she had earned her rank in battle. She had also been one of the first to fully embrace the Black Rising. Her eyes still had a hint of darkness at their edges, even when she was not in combat. Captain Wyhev received new orders. "We are to lead the assault on Morvani Prime, Conquest Round. The Morvani? They are traitors. They were never truly aligned with the Valari. High Command says they have been supplying the Dominion with resources. They must be brought into line." Brought into line? They are civilians, merchants. They have no military to speak of. Park's expression did not change. "Orders are orders, Captain. We leave in 2 hours." Okonkwo wanted to argue, wanted to say that attacking peaceful traders was not what they had set out to do. But the words would not come. The Black Rising stirred inside him, whispering that the Morvani had chosen their side, that enemies wearing them as regardless of whether they held weapons. 2 hours, he repeated. "I will be ready." Park left. Okono sat in the darkness and tried to feel something. Anything. The attempt failed. On Earth, General, Marcus Cole was dealing with a different kind of crisis. The population had changed. The Black Rising had touched every human being, but not everyone had embraced it the same way. Some had become warriors, their minds cold and focused on nothing but victory. Others had become builders. Their intellects expanded beyond normal human limits. Still others had become healers, their bodies somehow able to repair the wounded with a touch. But some had become something else, something dangerous. Cole read the reports with growing unease. There were incidents across the globe. People who had lost themselves completely to the Black Rising, people who attacked anyone they perceived as a threat, regardless of whether the threat was real. People who had stopped speaking, stopped eating, stopped doing anything except preparing for war. They are not sick, Dr. Elena Vasquez explained. She looked exhausted, older than she had 3 months ago. They are evolving. The Black Rising is pushing them further down the path. The architects walked. If we do not find a way to slow it down, we cannot slow it down, Cole interrupted. We are winning. The Valari are retreating on every front. 3 more species have joined our alliance in the last week alone. If we stop pushing now, we give them time to recover. And if we keep pushing, we may not be human when we finally win. Cole was silent for a moment. He knew she was right. He could feel the change in himself, the coldness that came more easily than warmth. The calculations that replaced emotions, the way he saw people as resources to be managed rather than individuals to be cared for. What choice do we have? He finally asked. The Valari still have the holy theocrat. They still have Prime. Until they are destroyed completely, they will always be a threat. Elena shook her head. There has to be another way. If you find one, tell me. Until then, we fight. Across the galaxy, Thruer continued. Human fleets struck at Veltari positions with relentlessity. They freed enslaved species and recruited them into growing alliance. The CRE provided soldiers their insectoid bodies perfect for ground combat. The Chilix swarms served as scouts. There are millions of small creatures able to infiltrate any defense. The hollow-built ships. Their technical skills finally turned to something other than the enrichment of their masters. But as the alliance grew stronger, so did the darkness within it. On the liberated world of KSAs, the human occupation force had been welcomed as heroes. The CRE had celebrated 4 days. Their clicking songs of joy echoing through tunnels that had known sorrow for 3,000 years. Then something went wrong. A young CRT, barely more than a child, had accidentally bumped into a human soldier in the marketplace. It was nothing, a meaningless accident. But the soldier had reacted instantly, violently. His hands moved before his mind could stop them, and the correct child lay dead on the ground before anyone could intervene. The soldier stood over the body, confused. He had not meant to kill Anyan. The Black Rising had simply reacted to what it perceived as a threat, however small, however innocent. I did not mean to, he kept saying as his comrades pulled him away. I did not mean to. But the damage was done. The CRE, who had celebrated human liberation, looked at their liberators with fear. The alliance that had seemed saw-strong suddenly showed cracks. Admiral Tanaka received the report and felt nothing but annoyance. The soldier would have to be disciplined. Rules would have to be established. Theliance needed to be maintained. She did not feel grief for the dead child. She could not feel grief anymore. Her daughter, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr., led the Vanguard fleet now. She had become one of the most effective commanders in the human armada. Her ships always the first to engage the enemy, always the last to leave the battlefield. She had killed more Valari than anyone could count. Yuki barely recognized her mother anymore. The admiral had become a symbol, a figure, of distant authority who issued orders and expected them to be obeyed. The woman Woe had taught her to ride a bicycle, who had comforted her when her father died, who had told her stories about Thesters. That woman seemed to have vanished. Mother, Yuki said during on-off, their rare conversations. Do you remember my father? Tanaka paused. Of course I remember him. What do you remember? Tanaka tried to think. She knew the facts. His name, his face, his death. But the feelings that should have been attached to those facts were gone. The grief, the love, the warmth the Mori shared, All of it had faded into the cold efficiency of the Black Rising. "He was a good man," she said finally. "He would have been proud of what we are accomplishing." Yuki looked at her mother and saw nothing she recognized. Would he be proud of what we are becoming? Tanaka did not answer. She turned back to her tactical display and began planning the next assault. On Belarus Prime, the Holy Theocrat gathered his most trusted advisors. The situation was austere. Human fleets had conquered a third of the Dominion in 3 months. Species had been loyal for millennia, were now openly rebelling. The Velara military was in shambles, unable to match the speed and ferocity of the human attacks. "We cannot win through convention warfare," the Theocrat admitted. "The humans are too powerful, too coordinated. Every time we destroy one of their ships, they seem to learn from it. Every time we develop a new weapon, they counter it within days." "What do you propose?" asked Admiral Kor, the highest-ranking military officer still alive. "We must use the weapon." Silence fell over the chamber. Everyone knew what weapon he meant. It was ancient, built by Therchutex themselves in the days before they became the architects. A device capable of shattering stars and destroying entire solar systems. "The Star Killer has never been tested," Kor said carefully. "We do not know if it still functions." "It functions. I have had it maintained in secret for 10,000 years, waiting for a threat worthy of its use. The humans are that threat. If you use it, we will destroy not only the humans, but millions of our own people. The systems surrounding Sol are filled with Velari colonists." The Theocrat's eyes were cold. "They will be martyrs. Their sacrifice will be remembered. The destruction of the human homeworld will break the back of their alliance. Without Earth, without their architect blood connection to each other, they will become ordinary again, vulnerable, destroyable." Admiral Kareth bowed his head. "As you command, Holy One." The Star Killer was activated. A weapon designed to destroy suns, built in an age when the galaxy knew terrors beyond anything the Velari could imagine. It began its slow journey towards Sol, a moon-sized device capable of ending human civilization in a single terrible moment. But the humans were watching. Dr. Elena Vasquez detected weapons energy signature from her laboratory on Earth. She analyzed the readings and felt her blood run cold. "They are going to destroy the sun," she whispered. "They are going to kill everyone." She contacted Admiral Tanakami immediately. For once, the Admiral showed emotion. Not fear, but something darker. Anticipation. "So they have decided to end it." Tanaka said, "Good. Let them come. Let them bring their ancient weapon. We will show them what true power looks like." "Admiral, this is not just anatherbital. If that weapon reaches Sol, billions will die. We need to evacuate." "We will not evacuate. We will not run. We will destroy the weapon, and then we will destroy Belarus Prime itself. The Feluri have sealed their own fate." Ellen stared at the Admiral's image on the screen. There was no humanity left in those eyes, only cold determination, only the Black Rising. Finally, and completely in control. "Why, UKI," Alina said quietly. "What happened to you?" Admiral Tanaka did not answer. She cut the communication and began issuing orders for the final battle. The Sterilar drew closer to Sue. The human fleet prepared to meet it. And somewhere in the depths of space, the ghosts of the architects watched their children prepare for either their greatest triumph or their final destruction. Thur had reached its turning point. What happened next would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the fate of an entire galaxy. And on both sides, people began to wonder if victory was worth the cost of what they were becoming. The Star Killer moved through space like a moon made of metal and death. It was sentient, beyond understanding, built by hands that had not been human, but had carried the same blood. Now it came to destroy the descendants of its creators, guided by those who had stolen their technology and called it their own. Admiral Tanaka watched it approach on her tactical display. The weapon was still 3 days from Sol, moving slowly but inexorably toward its target. Behind it came the last of the Velari fleet, everything the Dominion had left. 4 million ships protecting the device that would, End the war and fire. Million, Captain Okonkwo said. He stood beside Tanaka on the bridge of their resilience, his eyes dark with the black rising. We have 2 million, and we need to protect Earth while simultaneously attacking the weapon. We do not need to protect anything, Tanaka replied. We attack all of us. Everything we have. We destroy the Sterilar, then we destroy Valari fleet, then we destroy Valaris Prime. This ends now. And if we fail, if the weapon gets through, then we fail. But failure is not an option. The Black Rising will not allow failure. Okano nodded slowly. He understood. The darkness inside him agreed with every word. Victory or death? There was neither choice. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. listened to the orders from her. Position in the Vanguard fleet. Her mother's voice was cold and empty, like a recording rather than a living person. The woman who had raised her, who had loved her, who had been her hero for 30 years, that woman was gone. Yuki felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not cried since the awakening. The Black Rising had taken that ability along with so many others. But now fussing, the end of everything, something inside her cracked. Mother, Shu whispered. But the channel was closed. Her mother was already planning the battle, calculating vectors and attack patterns, treating human lives as numbers on a screen. The Allied fleet assembled 2 million ships from Earth and a dozen liberated worlds. Humans, CR, Holloway, Chillax, and a dozen other species. All united against the VLAR. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. It would not be enough. The numbers did not work. Even with their superior weapons and coordination, attacking the Starkiller while fighting for million enemy ships was almost impossible. They would win or lose, live or die. But either way, the cost would be terrible. Admiral Tanaka did not care about the cost. She cared about victory. Nothing slattered. The attack began at midnight, Earth time. The Allied fleet jumped into the space surrounding the Starkiller and immediately engaged the very defenders. The battle was chaos from the first moment. Ships exploded in every direction. Weapons fire filled the void with light. The screams of dying crews echoed across communication channels. Tanaka commanded from the center of the formation. Her mind linked to every ship through the Black Rising. She felt them fighting and dying. She directed them like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. She was no longer Yuki Tanaka, the woman. She was the Black Rising itself, wearing human flesh. The Valari fought with the desperation of creatures facing extinction. They knew what would happen if they lost. The Holy Theocrat had made it clear, victory or death. There would no surrender, no negotiation. This was the end. On the bridge of Thevalari command ship, Admiral Korth watched the battle with growing horror. The humans were everywhere. Their ships moving with impossible coordination. Their weapons striking with deadly precision. Every time the Valari thought they had established a defensive line, the humans would find a weakness and exploit it. They are not fighting like individuals, Korth said. They are refighting like a single organism. That is the Black Rising, said his aide, the old curse of the architects. It makes them perfect warriors, but takes their souls in exchange. Then they have already lost, whether they win this battle or not. On the carrier Defiance, Captain Okonkwo led his strike group toward the Starkiller itself. The weapon was protected by hundreds of defensive platforms and thousands of ships, but he did not hesitate. The Black Rising drove him forward, demanding that he destroy the threat to Earth regardless of the cost. His first officer, Lieutenant Commander Park, fought beside him. Her eyes were completely black now, no trace of white remaining. She had surrendered to the Black Rising more completely than almost anyone. Target the power core, she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. One precise strike will destabilize Thuipen. The shields are too strong. We cannot penetrate them. Then we go through them. Park diverted all power to the forward shields and accelerated to maximum speed. The Defiance's escort ships followed, forming a wedge aimed at the heart of the Starkiller's defenses. The Valfari fired everything they had. Ships in the wedge exploded one by one, their crews dying without sound in the vacuum. But the wedge kept moving, kept pushing, driven by the relentless will of the Black Rising. Captain Okonkwo watched his people die and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. They were serving their purpose. They were making victory possible. That was all that mattered. The Defiance reached the Starkiller shield perimeter and crashed through. The impact tore the forward third of the ship apart, killing hundreds instantly. But the rear section survived and its weapons were still functional. Fire, Okonkwo commanded. The Defiance's main gun struck the Starkiller's power core. The ancient device shuddered. Warning lights flashed across its surface. Something deep inside it began to fail. Then it exploded. The blast was enormous, bright enough to be seen from Earth with the naked eye. The Starkiller, the Valeri's ultimate weapon, was destroyed. And with it went the last hope of the Dominion. The Valari fleet broke. Ships that had been fighting to the death suddenly turned and ran. Their crews overwhelmed by despair. Their weapon was gone. Their cause was lost. There was nothing left but survival. The human fleet pursued. The Black Rising demanded that every enemy be destroyed, that no threat to Earth ever be allowed to escape. They hunted the retreating Valari acrospace, destroying them by the thousands. Admiral Tanaka felt victory approaching. A few more hours and the Valari fleet would be eliminated. Then they would go to Valaris Prime and finish what they had started. The Dominion would fall, and humanity would rule in its place. And then the message came. The Holy Theocrat appeared on every screen in both fleets. He looked old, broken, defeated. His 4 eyes were wet with something that might have been tears. "Humans," he said, "children of the architects, I speak to you now, Notice, the ruler of the Dominion." But as one mortal being to another, Tanaka watched with cold contempt. "What do you want, old one?" "I want to ask you a question." "You have one." "The Starkiller is destroyed. My fleet is scattered. There is nothing stopping you from conquering the galaxy and ruling it as your ancestors once did." "That is correct. But your ancestors chose not to rule. They had the power to dominate all life in the galaxy, and they walked away. Do you know why?" Tanaka did not answer. She did not know, and she did not care. They saw what they were becoming. The Theocrat continued. The Black Rising made them invincible in battle, but it took everything else from them. They stopped caring about beauty or love or kindness. They stopped being people and became weapons. They realized that victory meant losing everything that made life worth living. You speak of weakness. We have no weakness. That is precisely my point. The Theocrat leaned forward. Look at yourself, Admiral. Look at your fleet. You have become the thing the architects feared most. Perfect warriors without hearts. Conquerors without compassion. You were supposed to be better than us. You were supposed to be the architects reborn, not their darkest shadow. For a moment, something stirred inside Tanaka. A memory of who she had been before the war. A whisper of the woman who had loved her daughter and mourned her husband and dreamed of exploring Thesters in peace. Then the Black Rising smothered it. "Your words mean nothing," she said. "Prepare your world for destruction." But Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. had Hardith's message too. And something in the Theocrat's words broke through the darkness that had wrapped around Hermond. She remembered her mother. Not the cold admiral who commanded fleets, but her real woman. The one who had held her when she was scared. The one who had taught her that strength meant protecting people, not hurting them. The one who had said that the stars were beautiful because they were so far away, so full of mystery, so much bigger than Thenoni, war, or conflict. Yuki looked at her tactical display. Her vanguard fleet was moving towards Prime. Weapons charged. Ready to destroy an entire civilization? Billions of Valar. Most of them ordinary people who had never held a weapon, who had simply been born into Throng species. The Black Rising urged her forward. "Destroy them," it whispered. "They are enemies. They are threats. They must be eliminated." But Tuki pushed back. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. The Black Rising was strong. So strong that it had consumed almost everything she was. But deep inside, In a place that the darkness had not quite reached, there was still a spark. A tiny flame of humanity that refused to die. No, Chassaid. The word echoed through her mind. The Black Rising recoiled from it. No, she said again, louder this time. This is not who we are. This is not what my father died for. This is not what my mother fought for before this war consumed her. She opened a channel. Tough Vanguard fleet. All ships hold position. Do not fire on Vetheros Prime. Lieutenant, her first officer, looked confused. Those are not our orders. I am giving new orders. We are not going to destroy that planet. We are not going to kill billions of innocent people just because some ancient darkness in our blood tells us to. The Black Rising fought her. It clawed at her mind, trying to reassert control, but Yuki held on to that tiny flame of humanity and refused to let go. We chose to fight back as Earth was threatened. We chose to free the enslaved species because it was right. We did not choose to become monsters. I did not choose to become a monster. Her words spread through the fleet. Other humans heard them and felt something stir inside themselves. Thesberg, that Yuki had found, existed in all of them, buried under the Black Rising but not destroyed. On the Resilience, Admiral Tanaka received reports of the insubordination. Her first instinct was fury. Her daughter was disobeying orders, endangering the mission, showing weakness when victory was within reach. But then she heard Yuki's voice. Mother, please. I know you are still in there. I know the woman who raised me is not completely gone. Please remember. Remember who you were before the war. Remember what you wanted to show me when you first took me to see the stars. Tanaka felt something crack inside her. A barrier that had seemed unbreakable, it showed fractures. Memories flooded in. Her daughter as a baby crying in the night. Her husband lawing at something stupid she had said. Her own face in the mirror so long ago, full of hope and wonder instead of cold calculation. Mother, please come back to me. Theblak, rising, tried to stop her. It wrapped around her mind and squeezed, trying to crush the rebellion before it could spread. But Tanaka was strong. She had always been strong, and now she used strength, not to fight enemies, but to fight herself. Yuki, she whispered, then louder. All ships hold position. Do not fire on Baleari's Prime. The order spread through the fleet. Ship after ship stood down. The Black Rising fought to maintain control, but it was losing. Humanity was remembering who they were. The Holy Theocrat watched in amazement as the human fleet stopped its advance. He had expected death. He had expected fire from the sky and the end of his species. Instead, he saw ships holding position, weapons powering down, aggression transforming into... What are you doing? He asked. Admiral Tanaka appeared on his screen. Her eyes were still dark, but there was something else in them now, something human. We are making a choice, she said. The architects Chisido destroy themselves rather than become monsters. We choose differently. We choose to keep the power, but control it. We choose to win the war, but remain while we are. Is that possible? Can you truly contain the Black Rising? I do not know, but we have to try. Otherwise, what is the point of surviving? On ships throughout the fleet, humans were having similar moments of awakening. Soldiers remembered their families. Scientists remembered their curiosity. Artists remembered beauty. The Black Rising did not disappear. It was still there, still powerful, still waiting, but humanity collectively chose to push it back. It was not easy. Some could not do it. Some had surrendered too completely to the darkness and could not find their way back. But most succeeded. Most held on to that spark of humanity and used it to light their way out off the abyss. Admiral Tanaka opened negotiations with the Holy Theocrat. The terms she offered were harsh, but not genocidal. The Dominion would dissolve. Every enslaved species would be freed. The Valari would face justice for their crimes, but not extinction. You would spare us? The Theocrat asked, disbelief in his voice. After everything we have done, we would give you a chance, Tanaka replied. The same chance we are giving ourselves to be better than what we have been, to build something new from the ashes of the old. The Theocrat wept. He had ruled through fear for 10,000 years. He'd never believed that mercy was possible in a universe as harsh as this one. Now facing the descendants of Thespesies his ancestors had betrayed, he learned otherwise. The war ended not with destruction, but with transformation. Theory Dominion became part of the new galactic cooperative. Its power broken, but its people saved. The enslaved species took their places as equals. Humanity became guardians oft new order, respected and feared, but also trusted because when they had held absolute power, they had chosen mercy. 50 years later, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before an audience of multi-ACE students at the Galactic Academy. She was old now, ancient by human standards, but her eyes were still sharp, and her mind still keen. The architects failed, she told them, because they could not control what they were. They had power beyond imagination, but they let it consume them. They became weapons instead of people, conquerors instead of builders, destroyers instead of creators. She paused, looking around at the faces before her. Humans, Kreth, Hollow, Valari, and a dozen other species, all learning together, all building the future together. Humanity faced the same choice. The Black Rising offered us some power and demanded the same price. For a time, we paid that price willingly. We became the thing we feared most. Alina smiled, remembering Herefriends who had fought and died and lived through the war. Tanaka, who had retired to his small house by the sea and spent her days teaching children about the stars. Cole, who had become a diplomat, using the skills he had learned in war to build peace. Okano, who had turned the Defiance into a museum ship and now guided visitors through its halls. It's telling the stories of those who had served. But in the end, we made a different choice. We chose to keep our humanity even when everything pressured us to abandon it. We chose to be people instead of weapons. We chose mercy when we could have chosen destruction. She looked at the students, her eyes filled with hope. That is the lesson of the Black Rising. Power is not the measure of a species. What matters is what you do with that power. What matters is who you choose to be. Outside of the Academy, ships from 100 worlds move through the sky. Trade vessels, exploration craft, passenger liners. A galaxy that had known only fear and oppression for 12,000 years was learning what it meant to be free, and somewhere in the dark between galaxies, other seeded species were beginning to awaken, species that carried the same blood as humanity, the same potential for power and darkness. They looked toward Sue, toward the little world called Earth, and wondered, could they too make the choice that humanity had made? Could they become something more than what they were born to be? The answer humanity had learned was always theism. Yes, but only if they chose it. Only if they fought for it. Only if they refused to let the darkness win. The story of the Black Rising was over. But the story of the galaxy was just beginning. In humanity, the children of the architects, who had chosen to be more than their ancestors, would be there to guide it. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as what they had always been meant to be, guardians of foe. And the stars, which had once seemed so hostile and terrifying, now sparkled with promise. The universe was vast and full of wonder, and humanity was finally ready to explore it together.